The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unbegun. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unbegun. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
What's up, everybody? We be the Natural Freedom League. We are at naturalfreedomleague.com, back again with another episode number 65, Intergenerational Freedom, with our good friend David Rodriguez. What's up, David? Can David not hear me?
Can you hear us, David? Exit
Sometimes,
and come
yes.
back in. Okay. You could try to exit and come back in, and it might restart.
All right. I had a technical difficulty myself there and forgot to introduce my producer and co-host.
That's all good, man.
Chill Will Keller.
What's
little brain
up?
fart right there. So
No worries, brother.
I guess we'll pull it back in with David in a minute. It's always good to have David on.
Yeah. We'll put up the Convergence conference coming up. FUNL 2, September 10th and 11th. freedomundernaturallaw.com. Check it out. All right, let's see. How's that? Can you hear us?
Is that better, David? No, you
That
can't
sounds
hear
good.
us, huh?
Yes.
Got it.
Maybe a delay, but I can hear you.
Okay. Cool. We'll roll with it.
Yeah, why don't you start telling us, David, about intergenerational freedom? I've heard you say that term a few times in some videos, and I think it sounds like an interesting topic that'd be worthwhile to get into. So you take it away.
Yeah, so the idea of intergenerational freedom is the transfer of the knowledge of self-ownership, non-aggression, and self-defense. I think this is a critical component for increasing liberty locally and globally for us and for future, because there's a lot of freedom action happening, and people, the last 2 years of the scamdemic has, I think, awakened many people, not to the legitimacy of government, but to corruption in government and to overreach of government. But we want them to go all the way, at least me, in understanding equal. We're all, nobody has the right to rule anybody. Of course, no masters, no slaves. And it's very, very important that we have this concept, because the intellectual foundation of freedom, which is who owns your body. And nobody asked me that question until I probably in my 30s. I heard that question asked, and I think it's a brilliant question. And young people can really understand that concept a lot better than adults can, I think, because they don't have the program that we have gone through the state school system and the media. And so to transfer this knowledge of the truth of self-ownership, non-aggression, and self-defense, I think it has to come down to parents, and if not to me, but it has to be intentional, because if anybody is aware that they own their body, they're almost impossible to be enslaved. Whereas, many people, that government has a claim and somehow responsible for their health or responsible aspect of their life, and your audience, and know that taxation is robbery, is theft. So not delegate right that you don't have. So if it's not okay for me to take some money, I can't delegate that right to the government to go and take someone's money. And one of the gave in the talks at Float Fest and the Exit and Build there in Texas, one of my friends, Rosalind Ross, she wrote a book, and she actually told me this, how she taught ownership to her son who was 5 years old, and she taught him that before mommy picks you up, I'm gonna ask mommy pick you up. Yes, okay, pick up mommy. And so this young 5-year boy was at a family reunion, and uncle was not comfortable with, came up, tried without his consent, and he slammed his elbows down and like backed off from the family member and said, "Hey, you need permission to pick me up." And the adult was like, "Oh, sorry, is it okay if I?" And the son was, "No, no, thank you," and just smiled and kind of like skipped off. And that was one of my favorite stories about practical way let your empower your children is the key thing. Like we are the queens, we are the sovereign, but people get confused, sovereign citizens. So I think maybe a better term might be the self, or this is my domain, this is my kingdom right here, and it's a new opposed to statism. We have to yield to the governor, the city, state, county, federal officials. The whole point of the Bill of Rights was to put change on the government, not on the individual. So charity, I think, has a great opportunity now to pass on these truths of freedom, which is you own your body, I own my body. This is a fact. This is something that cannot be out. This cannot, no matter what these guys do, and all these political buildings around the country, around the world, and like who and giving away national sovereignty, all that stuff has power if the people realize that they own their body. And these guys, it's a difficult conversation to have. People love America and love the flag and what it stands for and these types of things. And maybe the Declaration of Independence was a really powerful, and there were some good things about the document, but we can see, as Paul said in his farewell address, the Constitution has failed in 2012. And so now we're 10 years later, and we're seeing a lot of criminality happening, no justice, and it's like really difficult to see what's happening, because we have friends who are in the court system. I'm dealing with my court stuff. Some of you know at david.org, and ultimately it's about freedom, and the intergenerational is to transfer it to the next generation, because we're all one generation from the disappearance. Freedom is a very new thing for humanity, and we got to step up in whatever way we can. And I think that starts with primarily, of course, family and friends, but seeing 5-year-old or 8-year-old, whoever it is, as the young king and young queen that they are, and to communicate with them in that. And this goes to a whole other conversation about parenting and keep order in the house and these kind of things. But in terms of I see it like a baton in a relay race. You guys ever seen like the 4x4 relay race Olympics, and you pass the baton? We're receiving the baton. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, of Rothbard and maybe Lysander Spooner and Auburn Hearn and some of these other people, Larkin Rose, who's still alive and doing well. Like, these are ideas that are bulletproof and they're solid, and to be intentional about that transfer, so that the young, they get older, right? They're going to blink and they're going to be 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 as we are. And wow, freedom is like under attack. We're like, yeah, that's how previous generation and the previous generation, I call them, I don't call these guys the elites. I try to use accurate language if possible. So I call them the outnumbered, intergenerational predator. And so this is what these guys are doing, and how kind of transcend what they're doing is through knowledge. It's an education game. I got a lot of respect for Ron Paul and these other people who are using these platforms, and even if they're running for politician, they're trying to get these ideas out there, and that's unstoppable is the idea whose time has come. And many of these patriots, I think they're on the right track, but unless they go all the way, they're just going to keep in the cycle of statism and swing back and forth with left right politics, where we can actually go above and beyond, is that we're all equal. I own my body. Nobody's allowed to use any violence or coercion against us. no matter what you guys write on a piece of paper. So that's what a little bit what I spoke about. Help parents understand they play a critical role, even if your child's in public school. You want to think about, if there's any way to get them out, you got to. They're in this slavery mindset in the school system, and mom and dad are not the ones to correct that. Then they're going to family, or say adopted by the state, and of course that's by design to break up these strong bonds between parents and children and grandparents, where this is the protective barrier that has stood the test of time. But now with all this divide and conquer and race and all these gender things, this are on fire, and you got to get your kids out. And if you don't plan, you want to create a plan, a 6 month, a 12 month, because in 1 year, in 2 years, in 5 years, we're going to have this conversation. They're going to become with more tyranny, and who knows what the tyranny is going to look like. But in my opinion, the solution, what we already have, which is voluntary consensual relationships. Everybody agrees to cooperate in a peaceful way. No one's allowed to, and this is a win-win. And even if they're patriots and constitutionalists, there's still some type of common ground. So trying to find the common ground and make friendships with these people, not enemies. Many of them just haven't got information, just like I didn't get the information and other people didn't get the information, despite Lysander Splinter writing that book in 70, The Constitution of No Authority. And if that's the only thing you get from this interview, go read that essay. I mean, that is an unbelievable essay, which just is another appeal to blow up my paradigm of the world. And this is why I'm passionate about this. One way to get the intergenerational aspect, it's up to mom and dad, and just become aware that if you don't teach freedom to your child, they're not going to learn it in school. They're not going to learn it on television. They're not going to. It's up to you and your community that you are a part of to consciously put this idea into their vocabulary, understanding, and consciousness, because it's a scary idea to the predator psychopaths. The predator psychopaths want to justify their slavery because of a health pandemic, and now we're talking about the monkeypox, and it's like they're just going to keep doing it. Current thing, whatever this is, they're exposing themselves. So I got a lot of respect for independent and free media like you guys are producing here, because this is one of the ways to create intergenerational. Because what we're doing is create media that can now be cut and pasted in other places where it forever. And those are some of the things. The teaching of self-ownership got to be a priority, at least for me, to help understand this is you're responsible for your life. And as soon as you start to lean on the government takes advantage of that, and it's very scientific. So to speak about it out there, of course, there's the technology part of it, where you guys are banned on YouTube, and I've gotten kicked off YouTube and Instagram and other places, and like, what is going on here? They're the intellectual, as Jones said many years ago, it's information war. It's an war. So to into that information in front of the children, I think is very important for the intergenerational aspect of it. Like I said, the homeschool and all these other aspects are. But in terms of intergenerational, that truth is what I spoke about, and I think I'm going to try to work out to create more of these conversations, because I feel a lot of hope in this conversation of intergenerational freedom. But when it comes to electing a new politician, yay, politician, it doesn't inspire me. So I don't know, inspired by politicians, but my guess is probably not. But it's the idea is solid, and intergenerational freedom is a solution that gives me some.
That's phenomenal, man. I'm extremely passionate with all of those topics. And to me, they are the most important topics that we can be talking about right now. Freedom, which is the most basic knowledge that every human being must understand, is that you own yourself, do no harm, and you have the right to defend yourself, right? This should be common knowledge. conscious parenting and intergenerational freedom, in my opinion, that one category can completely change the current human condition, the dynamic that we're in, to achieve freedom. And it's so important for parents to understand this and look within themselves and educate themselves, and then teach this to their children. Be the example, right? It's so vital.
Right.
Yeah, man, great stuff. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard too, because if the parent isn't doing the work of learning and expanding their own knowledge bank and even vocabulary, right? We got to expand our voice so we can actually understand what is going on, how to see it, that we've been duped generations. And this is like, wow, man, the education system, the financial system, the medical system, the communications media system, these things have been used, weaponized against us. And, for so many years, parents take their kids to Disneyland or take them to these, places that have this brand that, like, yeah, play fun with the kids. In the meantime, they're teaching, your son can have a vagina, or your daughter can have a penis or something. It's like, so these are like the red flags. These are the canary in the coal mine, where these giant corporations are trying to break up the family. And then one of the revelations I had as on this stuff is like they're basically trying to break down the obvious identity of children and then rebuild that identity, benefit the state, and tell the child who they are, despite looking at their private parts and being, no, for sure, I'm a boy, you're a boy, whatever. And they're like, no, if you feel differently, then you can be not that. And it's like, so they're trying to crush that truth of the identity of who it is. And mom and dad might not know the evil stuff that's happening in schools. They're starting to realize now. And this is why we got to get the kids out of the school system. And then even in the homeschool conversation, discuss these things, because I think humanity is going to win, but we're going to have a difficult, dark phase, not an era, but like there's going to be some, awakenings that are happening. People are going to say, oh my gosh, just like we've been saying for years, the more people awakening to the deception and is by these mega corporations and these secret societies. But I think the bag, and now it's just a matter of having courage to say the emperor has no clothes, and stop pretending that these institutions are trying to help your child or help the family, trying to create a control mechanism. And the exit and build strategy is another one, which is very exciting that we can talk about, but which are transcendental, and parents got to do the work. We have to read courses and tune in. Is under attack. We can do it. We can get it back, or push it further because of technology and decentralized technology. So we just got to kind of see a bigger vision and see a brighter destination to go if we all step up and take whatever passion or interest that we can get it out there, because freedom is a beautiful thing, and I love it, and I know you guys love it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right too. That, I mean, the social engineers, right? They absolutely want to put that wedge in between child and parent, because the parents are the anchor of their life, especially at a young age, right? So parents have that responsibility to teach this kind of stuff, educate themselves and teach it as well. But parents, we need to raise our kids to be ungovernable, right? For external influence, kind of like what you were talking about. You have intergenerational freedom. Well, there's also generational mind control, and this is what we've been going through for many, many years. And yeah, there are parents waking up, which is the first step, right? The second step is to educate and get the resources, because it's a common question. People go, well, I want to homeschool or I want to unschool, but how do I do it? The more people come out and go public and talk about this stuff and share work like, super valuable work like yours, where you actually guide parents through that process, it's crucial.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate a couple of things that David said.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, John.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate. You mentioned something. You didn't necessarily say this, but the concept of you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's you realize these things like the Constitution failing, and it's the rights actually are inherent in nature, but yet also you have to recognize the people who tried to interject that knowledge into government, and that's been passed down to us, and we're trying to perfect that system of living in true freedom, voluntarism, anarchy. One thing I wanted to mention too, for parents, Indica Martin's book, if you want to start young, I forget the title of the book right off the top of my head.
Give to nature and nature will give to you.
Yeah. I mean, for 3-4-year-old kids, real simple, talking about the words, the principles, really good place to start. Also, just in order to do what we're trying to do, we need to build those community bonds. Once we wake up, we have to, reach out to people like-minded in the community. And then from there, it's even the bigger step of trying to wake up the bigger part of society. So I guess my question for you is, what's your best approach for getting the word out?
I think exit and build a strategy of the future. Exit all their systems and build that. See, now in terms of education, homeschooling is that exit build. And then I interviewed a guy named Mike Cullum. He started his own grocery store with his wife, and then they start health country. And I was like, man, this is exciting. This is great, because they put it in a PA, and they're actually in some, I think I would say, a offensive law battle now, because they are aware that even though institutionalists want to separate the government from what they're doing, and so starting grocery store clinics at the exit and build shop by freedomcells.org with Derek and John and Ramirez. And I mean, you got to get together. And so when Santa Cruz, and you guys were there many times, was gathering the people and kind of like get together a little bit. And now I think it's exit, and like they're looking at a 2030 timeline. They're just going to spend this next 8 years to transform words, transform faith, and create a lot of for people. So it's like, rather than having a term timeline, I think I'm going to have like a longer term timeline, and that's how these guys go. They move slow, right? They have their, but they little, chess pieces. But if we have intergenerational plans, I think it's very interesting. One of the ideas I learned from Brian Clemmer, he said, what's your 100-year goal? And I'm just like, man, I'm going to be dead in 100 years, man. He says, well, think about the impact for not just, a few generations, many generations. And that's the game that these generational predator psychopaths play. They got the money. If they move too fast, then awakens to their scheme and criminality. That's what's happening right now. So people are reading something's not right, but they haven't. It's like, yeah, your Constitution is a piece of paper, and that's what it is. And so people use it to justify. And we're in the third phase of conscious freedom, which first started with the monarchy, where the charge, and we're like, this is in Magna Carta 1215. The barons like, nah, king, you have too much power. Okay, have a representative government, and then now constitutional representative government's been out of control, And so that's the second phase. And we're going to go to the third phase, which is individual authority, autonomy, personal self-ownership, personal responsibility. Nobody has any claim, anything I'm doing, nobody has any claim on what you're doing out there. But what we want to do is create a cooperative relationship. And so just like there's been different awakenings to let piece of paper. And there was a great meme, and it's that stick figure with a stick, and he's poking the he says, hey, do protect my freedoms. It's a piece of paper. Right? So this defense is a natural right. If somebody's harming me or my wife or my children, I don't need pieces of paper. I don't need to protect them. And so confused. And of course, the criminal injustice system is very dangerous as well. And they have ruined many people's lives, ruined people's lives. So strength of community is, and to build community, intending to find moral, peaceful people that you can collaborate with. You don't have to agree on everything. It's okay to disagree and have different opinions and beliefs. But the common ground is self-ownership, not aggression. Common ground is self-defense, and there's personalities and all these things, but we got to find a common ground. They're trying to into 1,000 different little tribes or one issue and that's how we get to it. Is they divide us over these things, like the abortion issue. I got the abortion solution right now is the government has no, the government has no say. So if you're going to eat the baby or abort the baby, I mean, that's up to you. That's a very difficult decision. If you got to life begin, or when does the sperm and egg become a human? Because if you're going to decide that, then you'll find out many women regret having an abortion later, and that kind of haunts them. So there's around it, but like the government has no say in my bedroom, in my family, and it's a difficult decision to have a baby or abort the baby. But these are all distractions while they're doing it on the side, and get the far left fighting on government power. It's like, yeah, govern me harder, is what these people are saying. And rather than stepping into personality, which is actually empowering, and this individual freedom aspect is a bigger mountain to climb, is more work involved. There's more labor and effort and capital and energy. But when we climb that mountain, it's going to be worth it versus, getting a new guy in office or recalling. Imagine all the energy that tried to recall Gavin Newsom, if that energy could have been directed towards empowering the self-ownership, even just like basic marketing skills, or what you guys video and audio creation. This is very valuable. So people got to learn some of these skills of marketing and business, because I think the future, there's going to be more remote work, there's going to be more contract work, and you mothers and fathers there, the world that you up in is not what your children are growing up. So they intentionally took entrepreneurial spirit out of these schools or out of society, because this was a threat to the giant corporations in England and in Europe, the Dutch Indian Company and all these giant corporations, and it was mostly small business. So even now in America, most businesses are small, but the last 2 years shut businesses down, putting them out of business because people were good-hearted and they obeyed the government. But this is like another question of it's very high psychological warfare that guys are doing, making the virtual signaling their slavery thing, where people say, I'm wearing my mask to protect you. Like, no, you're not. You're wearing it to protect you, but like they get the psychological illusion, and so it's got to go. This is my body. You got that, people out there, brothers and sisters, government people out there. You piece of paper, it's a paper. You don't have a claim to this temple that God or nature or source gave to me, just like He gave you a body to have a spirit, to have a consciousness, their consciousness, and they're gonna think that's gonna happen, but we're gonna get through it through sharing the knowledge, egg building, and I think one of the solutions also is independent food, independent water, and energy. Now, these are areas that I'm like, I feel very ignorant on. I feel like very lacking in knowledge. Like, okay, well, I just went and bought some plants today. Figure this stuff out. I'm going to figure out how to grow some stuff and understand that they're trying to transform society in front of our eyes, telling boys they can have a vagina and women and girls they can have a. This is, again, the canary in the coal mine. Like, how strong men and women out there listen and see. Like, this is your world, and this is the world that we're going to hand off to our children. So there's a humanity happening. I think that is, many people are going down with the slavery. You don't wish that on anybody, but that's happening. And some people are ascending or transcending up to personal stability and harmonious, cooperative relationships. It's really basic. It's really simple. And that we just got to get that statist belief out of their mind that some authority over your body when you didn't consent at all. A really ridiculous idea. And so I'm just kind of working on my ways to communicate this better to people and have compassion on people. We're talking, and they're not evil. You know, the school teachers. There was a retired public school teacher, family members who are principals and teachers now, and there's cops that I met who know what time it is. But they're controlled by the money. It's that salary, it's that money, and it requires you to harm people. Then you got to quit your job. You got to find a way to not harm people, because there is no justification for peaceful people, because you got to put food on the table for your. In the meantime, destroying other people's family. So again, this is a longer a strategy. It's a bigger mountain, but I think it is a real solution. Because they're going to keep pounding the thousand small issues to break us up, and ultimately the children are suffering. So we got to get them out and hopefully exit and build all their things. You know, the grocery stores where I felt most of the tyranny the last couple of years, because, you know, the mask in the grocery stores, and of course on the planes. Was it the Freedom Travel Alliance who was doing some air travel? I think that's wonderful. So these types of like innovative entrepreneurs, you know, support that are actually trying to transcend the problem rather than just bitch about it and complain. We can make the strong and powerful men and women, and children have insights too. So involve them in the process and let them know it's going to be okay. But in the meantime, you have a community of people who don't know that they're born free, and this is your birthright from nature or God. You give that up, then that's on you. And I think that's what kind of these do. They use karma, say, well, if you're too dumb to follow us or things, then that's on you. Openly and willingly up your freedoms, then you don't deserve them. And this is what they think is like, oh my gosh. So, you know, to be on the side of truth and freedom and love and compassion, I think is the answer. You know, we were giving free hugs down there in Santa, and I didn't think there was anybody who would like object against that. But there's people. It was 95% positive, but there were some people who were like appalled that we were giving hugs, free hugs, voluntary public. I was just like, I felt really bad for these people, man. Before trying to like persuade them of the facts or the tests or whatever, it's like, man, I feel really bad for you, man. Like, out here is dangerous while your government is taking 40% of your livelihood, and you compound that over a 45. That's out of a 45-year career, 30% of your money. That's 15 years the government is taking from you, and you're mad at me giving out free hugs. So I feel really bad for some of these people, and these people. So you want to have a community, and maybe that's where Freedom Cells comes in, or, you know, some other way. You meet up, find some groups. But I'm no longer really trying to save the world or wake up people. I think I'm trying to be the example of building, learning some of these garden things, which we learned down to Exit and Build Land Summit, permaculture, a lot of projects happening. If you haven't heard of Jim Gale, I'm going to interview him next week. foodforestabundance.com. And so he had a really powerful presentation, and that was just one of the guys. Has some great stuff up there in Idaho. But there's guys who are free. And what Jack Spurko says, solutions are there. The answers are there. Go out and get the answers. Now you got to go out and get the solutions. And rather than thinking you have to build this huge, culture, utopia, whatever. He said, walk out your back door. That first piece of dirt out there, that first piece of 1, 2, 3 square feet of dirt, start right there and, start learning. So it was a very, I don't think many of the people were voluntarious, but maybe about half of the people were on the voluntarious understanding. And we're just like, we just woke up the last year, I think it was about a fourth of the room said we're only here because COVID woke us up. And they don't some of the depths like you, John, and Will, where you know for a fact that freedom is your birthright and you can do whatever you want as well. And that type of strength is really persuasive to people, because I'm developing myself, and like now when I'm talking with people, I'm no longer trying to persuade them, but share and plant a seed, because we'll plant a seed today and we don't know if snake that or water that, nurture that in the next 6 months or year. But it's been 2 years, and I cannot believe it's been 2 years since this, and now they're coming out with all this craziness. Having a short-term focus as well as a long-term, but then realizing, I think they're going to try to do vax pass at these grocery stores, maybe after midterms, these fall elections that they have going on around here. So, anyways, it's very powerful to exit and build, and about that, and to learn about some of these ideas, and to promote them and share them with y'all.
Yeah, man, I definitely agree 100% on that whole message. Non-compliance is part of the solution, and we need to activate the responsibility, right, and put the action where our mouth is, and actually do it. To be conscious co-creators, meaning you're very selective on where you put your energy. And even your message, right? Because there are some people that aren't going to get it, but you can still plant that seed, like you said. And it's so important to have, to be the example, like you were saying. But I'm all for life skills, man. That's so important. Gardening and all that stuff. The good old saying is, ain't nothing to it but to do it. And it's really, really nice seeing, like John and I, we've been in a group for the last couple years. And again, I can't believe it's 2 years going on. And this is awesome. We need connection. The social engineers in the narrative, whatever they say, it's guaranteed it's always going to be the opposite. So getting down to causal factors in the solutions, which is always natural rights, sovereignty, and freedom, right? So all these other distractions, and there's a whole boatload coming in right as we speak, right? And that's all just to distract, misdirect, to it's perception management for behavior control. Because the last thing they want is people like you, John, and I actually doing what we're talking about now, taking action and detaching from the system. And that could be scary for a lot of people. But, COVID was the new 9/11 for a lot of people. So they're freshly, their awareness is pretty fresh. This is why using speech and the message is so important as well. It's a combination of things, but everything you said, man, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that, David, the problems you're talking about, the solution really is teaching this hidden knowledge of the trivium, which is really about discernment and morality, and, for example, the Hermetic principles. These things that have been hidden from us and aren't taught in public schools. These are all skills and ways to view the world that are much healthier than the messages that they're getting. And these ideas can help them to discern, the truth from the false of what they're getting.
Right. Yeah, the trivia is very powerful, good framework for like putting things together and trying to, they don't teach you logic to put the grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which is powerful, like the grammar is the pieces of it all, and the logic is how you put together, and the rhetoric is once you understand what works with other people, and whether it's verbal or written or art, this is another powerful point, is that the I've seen more conscious rappers starting to come up a little bit, but conscious music is very powerful. saw a quote from Bob Marley recently that really touched me, and he said, I don't know really, I don't know much about anything, but I do know this one thing, and that is my music will last forever. Thinking about what made him say that, because he got killed, in my opinion, by the U.S. government, because his message was about love. His message was about unity. His message was about freedom. So he was so passionate about his music that he put his activism in his music. So when say a protester, Bob Marley is probably one of the best freedom activists on the planet, And so if only he had put self-ownership or natural law rights into his music, I think been even more prolific, but he's done some great. So this is what I tell my musician friends. We can have musical skills yet. I think I should probably work on some. I'm a little bit of a, closet poet. We can beat the game, which is make an excellent track. And I think, John, you're doing some of this, but making some amazing records or hits that perpetuate and use the music of the music to win hearts and minds, because Marley, rest in power, my brother, but his music is still playing, and only you can, free yourself from mental slavery. That's hitting people still today. So in this, we can use art and music and film and these types to put these ideas in there. And another reason I respect Tuttle Twins and Connor team, they took these really big tomes of freedom literature, the cartoon kids, and they're actually make cartoons. So they're using media to get these ideas, and that's a major victory, I would say. So how to go to the next level of self-ownership, voluntarism, government authorities, because you can't delegate a right that you yourself, and you're not bound to a contract you didn't agree to. I mean, these are some of the fundamentals that I was just like, whoa, yeah, that's true. How comes nobody's talking about it? Because we are the ones we've been waiting. You guys are chosen, as you probably know, maybe you know, but we are, this is an amazing, we chose ourselves, or I don't know what it is, but the fact that we love freedom so much to go on and say we own ourselves in these schools, as John Gatto pointed out, for decades, intentionally destroying people. Charlotte Israel, the deliberate dumbing down of America, weapons of mass instruction are preying on your children. And so if that's not enough motivation, that just is a sign of the apathy and the complacency they put in all of us. And I see it in myself too. I'm not saying, areas of apathy in my life, but it's important to know that it was designed. You're sitting in a classroom for 12 years waiting for somebody to do, and now what we're realizing, we are all self-directed learners. We're all self-directed leaders, and nobody's going to tell us what to do. What's going to happen is that we're going to determine for ourselves what to do. And what's crazy was that even I got a business degree, and there was no classes, and so you find out later that goal setting is a key skill in any field, because you got to know where you are and you got to know where you want to be, and then you can break down larger goals into smaller goals. Very critical skill. Like, you think in an education system they would have a goal setting class 1 in 17 years of my compulsory schooling and university schooling. So this is another point for mom and dads out there: set goals for your family. Bring the kid about goals in your family. Make a vision board or a whiteboard. Garden, if it's energy, if it's food, if it's water, if it's entertainment. We got to get off their corporate entertainment that has captured our mind. As you know, to entertain is to enter and capture. Though we got to create our own folk songs. I mean, really, I don't know how to play the guitar yet, but I got one. So I'm playing with the strings. I'm like, how does this work? I don't. But at some point, I gotta, because I want my kids to become rock stars if they can. And you're rock stars, and they're already rock stars, but to actually focus. And there's a great interview by the Crocodile Hunter, and they asked him, rest in power, that gentleman, and he said, they asked him, I forgot his name, but he said, what do you want your legacy to be? And he says, passion and enthusiasm. And I can't do my accent, but he said, I want my children to carry on the protecting of the plant animals of earth. And like, that's what happened. You know, he had an untimely demise, and his children carried that on. He's actually doing intergenerational earth stewardship, protecting the animals and the plants and such through his children. And I think that's a positive example of how we can as well pass on these ideas, which are bulletproof. They're actual solutions, and no one's going to tell us freedom. It's like we got to tell ourselves, and this is why, you know, talking with you guys and going and hanging out, because now we can, you know, really share ideas transparently and freely with each other. That's why I try to isolate us during the last 2 years to make us feel like freedom is not important. Freedom is not the, you know, worth fighting for, or you're isolated, blah, blah, blah. Deep inside many people, they're like, this doesn't feel right. This, like, I don't know what's going on, but this doesn't feel right. And now I think the conversation is at least open to some of these things. And, you know, I'm going to go freedom events here shortly, but I think still focus on the Constitution. So it's like, all right, well, that was a good start. So let's find some, and then if a window opens, I'm some seeds, and I think the ground is self. So even a constitutionalist, even a voluntarist, we can agree on self-ownership, and if we agree on that, now we have a relationship, and now we can actually proceed to discuss what the ramifications are when these government agencies are openly talking about quarantining people if they're a health risk. This is where you want to organize self-defense, you know, scenario discuss. But really, the hyper-wealthy predator psychopaths are afraid of this conversation that we're having. And if they weren't trying to enslave us, they wouldn't be. But, you know, we come with truth and with love and with positive intention, if we can, for compassion for each other and the world that we're facing. And that's what happened in San. Wow, this is the world that we live in. You know, charges that, like, wow, what's on here? We went maskless shopping. We, you know, try to exercise our fish, not harm anybody, not damage anybody. Like, what is going on here? This state of the world that I live in. I was like, okay, so how to find remedies to these problems, term, and then there's long term, and we gotta, you know, I think use art and music and put it out there for the public so that they're like, some people are like, man, I'm afraid to like you're speaking. I said, man, I'm afraid to be silent at this point because it's so open, but everybody's been conditioned where they protect what they have, but they're like, have an injustice against your neighbor and you don't stand up, they're coming for you now. So that's what they say, is injustice anywhere is a threat everywhere. So it's like, you understand the nature of freedom and the nature of tyranny, and that is to isolate you, to make you feel weak, but you're pleasure, and there is nothing to be afraid of. I think we're immortal souls at some level, have a body, but they try to make us feel of life after death. But I think that's another one of their controllisms. So you don't live in full now today, because all we have is this moment. There's no guarantee next week. There's no guarantee next year, plotting out, you know, 50 years. Today is what we have. And I think when we get to conscious, present moment consciousness, liberated, and all we got to be is present now, and then we can build as, you know, one day it grows, goals and, you know, goals. But it's really about human being a better man is my goal, and, you know, other people, you know, get their kids out of the school system. Exit and Build conference, a few people came up to me because do accelerated graduations. So you have 14, 15, 16, 17, graduate them, and they're like, yeah, man, I'm in. I'm like, great, let's do it. So, you know, teenagers out of the school system, rather than sitting in this classroom for 4 or 5 years, where, like, what are we doing in here, man? What are you doing mopping your kids off? This is not to anyone, but it's kind of a, you know, like I said, the public schools higher, or they're like this place. You know, I drove past a high school today, and it's a big building, immaculate lawn out, like If I had to go to that high school, I know, like, I hate this place, man, because that's how it was in Masta, where I was raised and went to school. School, beautiful place. But I'm like, I hate this place, man. Not an inspiring place. This is not an empowering place. But I just went to the library. The library place. You have all this knowledge, all this freedom to choose what you want to read and study. So that's another little nugget about homeschooling, right? So homeschool consultant, homeschoolleader.com. You can leader.com. And there's a Facebook group, but it's a process. And I know because it doesn't have, but it's you learning what is an education, is success. It's basically success training for mom and dad to realize what I want for my child. I guess great. So what do you want? Probably want an empowered, independent, healthy, happy human. So if that's the goal, focus on that, and that should pull you. That should lead you, rather than, oh, we got to do algebra, and you're told it's like they're probably not going to need algebra in their life. Maybe if they go on to engineering, like all the stress that I had in school was wasteful and useless, and all these term paper bullshit. It's like, this is ridiculous, and it's happening in mass scale right now. So that's why I'm really a big proponent of getting your kids out of the school system. Have been discovered, been vetted and proven. But what we're dealing with is fear in our own mind. Fear we're going to mess up our children, and you can't mess up your children because you love your children. So what you're doing is a small little slip of what the public school is doing, and you want to recognize that sooner rather than later, and then you should have some courage and confidence to proceed and out to some of these homeschool associations. Reach out to local groups. You have to reach out to what you're trying through community, because one man alone is isolated, but the power of 3 people and 4 people. When we were down there at the beach, we started with like, but you don't have to have that many. You can just have 5 people, have 5 families do some shared homeschooling or co-op, come together, harmony, and agreeing on the goals or the core focus of your homeschool co-op school group. Do this. It's just that first barrier of fear, and get you through. Love will get you through. Do some history on what's going on in the schools, and you can build that community. I think the community is that, and we talked about some intentional communities, and so that's a whole nother thing. The volunteers spring up, and that are how to deal with that, and dealing with the other issues of humans and these kind of things. I think this is the intentional to focus on the next generation, and to look at ourselves in the mirror and realize you can do this. You're brilliant. You're genius. You have everything that you need right now. Expanding your company and getting out there so that you're okay mistakes and not attached to the, I am my mistakes. It's like, no, man, mistakes are a great teacher. and I recommend you make a lot of mistakes because learn.
I tell my daughter that too. Failure is a good thing because now you know what not to do, right? You can definitely learn from your mistakes. Yeah, man, that's all powerful. I think, parents, when they're entering the homeschooling or the unschooling realm, right? They have their conditioning. So they want to set up their house just like the public schools and how it operates and stuff. So, you got to understand natural learning versus artificial indoctrination, right? I mean, the world is the schoolyard, and experiences, those are the lessons, right? So kids mainly just need to live, right? And be mentored and have their needs met by their parents. The parents are the facilitators, and give them great experiences. Yeah, man, that's homeschoolleader.com. That's a fantastic website. Great info, dude.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah, let me give you something. Schooling phases. Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Just the 4 phases, because Will mentioned something which was, the how do you start, right? And so the phases generally to review for parents is, the first phase is school at home, which you said copy the curriculum and they take it home, and now it's 9 o'clock. Language argument you get through as soon as possible. Phase 2 is deschooling. So deschooling is the release of the pressure of learning, because when they're in a compulsory learning environment, they are being forced to be there. They're being forced to work, so they're under stress, and they are not connected to their true nature and their true power. So just like when you shake up a bottle, you have to take the lid off and let the pressure release before you can actually take a drink. So the rule of thumb for deschooling is that for every year they're compulsory learning environment, a force, you want to give them a month of total freedom. So let's say you have a 6th grader and you're just starting homeschooling. That's 6 years learning. So you want to give them 6 months of total freedom to do. If they want to sleep all day, let them sleep. If they want to play video games all day, let them play video games. What they want to do, they want to come back to homeostasis, come back to that 6-year-old who was looking you in the eyes with so much light and so passion for life. And that's the deschooling. And is homeschooling itself. And how I define homeschooling is when it creates an atmosphere where personalized learning can occur. So that's, I think, where I jump to, where you're like, okay, I'm the mother, the father, the facilitator. Refrain from saying I'm the teacher, but you're the learning partner, you're the facilitator, the guide. Somebody learning child rather than know it all, and I'll teach you. No, humble yourself. Like Socrates said, there's only once I know nothing. Or even Einstein said, every genius admits that he or she knows nothing. So if those guys can say it, then we could probably, take a version of that and say, we don't know much, okay? We know a little bit, but like, I know nothing, I think is a very powerful. And then the effects of learning, in my opinion, 100% self-directed learning. Some people unschooling. You don't need to create that atmosphere for your child, because to a place where they want to learn, they learn how to search for things, they learn how to find things, be creative and innovative. Doesn't mean they're like, but now they can set their own goals. Now they can decide what I want to do today, or what I want to do for the next 6 months, or what's a project that excites me, and then that would be the goal. So if you could go from 0, school at home, deschooling, home, self-directed learning, I think if you could do that in 2 months, that would be amazing. Some people take 6 months, 12 months, a year or 2. Even if it takes you 2 years or 3 years, that is a major victory for me. That's a major victory for your legacy, because removing your child from them is a real solution, and it's exciting. And now I read. I like to learn, but after high school, no, I didn't read another book till I was like 21, and somebody said, hey, this is a book about like success or business, and I was like, all right, you recommend it? Yeah. He recommended I read it. I read it like in 3 years. So there's a plethora of good books out there, so in the shape. But if they just got out of a compulsory, then learning is not fun for them. It's like, you have to do it. No, they don't. Learning is fun, exciting. This is a great thing. They didn't need curriculum to walk, they curriculum to talk. These are important skills. You probably agree with that. So if they can learn these important skills without coercion, compulsion, and a curriculum, then what about the others? Speaking, writing, reading, skills that are, we're so, concerned about. Attain them time, and then whether they learn to read when they're 8 or 10 or 12 or 14, by the time they're 18, doesn't matter when they learn to read. What matters is that they like reading, that you kindled that love of learning, which is a superpower. Because if they're going to be any type of success in the future, they're going to have to learn. This is the importance of allowing and empowering that learning skill, which is the most learning how to learn, learning references, how you take in information. And so anyways, John, those 4 phases of homeschooling in there, because we'll tend I just want to put in there.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming on, David. Another great episode. You always have a lot of really good information, and you're super optimistic. So that's really good. Kind of gets us energized. And go ahead and plug anything you want to plug before we get out of here.
Yeah, so David James Rodriguez, my links are, and then the freedavid.org, you guys will see some of the activism stuff I got going in court. Crazy situation which is not resolved. I have court in a month there. The homeschool leader group is on Facebook. So if you want to jump on, and there's the Freedom Show on Telegram at Freedom Lover. And yeah, these are all places to reach out, friends. The freedom is the issue of our lifetime. And you know, people like Will and John, you guys are rocking it. To keep banging the drum. And a lot of respect for you guys creating this show and guests on here. And we are who we have been seeking for. So it's like build each other. And yeah, it is beautiful time to be alive. And you know, I think our ancestors are cheering. So just got to keep on the path. And you guys are doing great work at the Natural Freedom League. Amazing content and information. Thank you for your leadership. Great talking with you guys, and look forward to communicating with you again and having a nugget about what's happening.
Awesome, David. Future. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you so much, dude. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. And always remember, put something good in the air.
Thank you, John.
And plant
Peace
something good.
Love you, brother.
Peace.
Love it. Yeah.
The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unbegun. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison, a prism, and that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural